How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Redemus Maximus.
This is the Dark One, J. Lovecraft.
I'm the Ghost of Star Queen.
And this is 8 Bits and Dice Rolls Podcast.
Yay!
So this episode, we actually experienced a few different things. Mr. Lovecraft, we were talking about certain video games earlier on the last episode.
Oh, I've experienced one just recently. It is so damn good.
Yep. So kind of the topics that we're going to be talking about today is we are going to be talking about some of our favorite horror video games, favorite horror movies. And we won't be talking about those too long, but they're included, and we are going to, since it seemed to be kind of interesting for other folks, we will be talking about some of the most famous places in Indiana that are haunted and kind of talk about our growing up through October and Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
So this should be a pretty fun episode. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start with talking about video games.
Oh, dude, I just found one in which I just fell in love. Oh, I'm sorry. Lust with.
Yeah. Which one was it?
Oh, Alien Isolation. I mean, God. I was like, okay, I've seen all the Alien movies, including the one I cannot wait, which is Alien Romulus. If you have any further information, please leave them in the comments and let us know, please, so we can share it with the rest of the universe. I've seen all the Alien films, and now I wanted to live one. And guess what? I got to live one.
Mm-hmm.
You did.
Alien Isolation as well is such a... Well, I remember when that game was coming out at the time, and the last Alien game that we'd gotten was Aliens Colonial Marines.
Which was terrible. So when the developers... So the last game of the developers who made Alien Isolation, they're best known for the franchise Total War, which is a strategy game. And so nobody really expected this game to be as good as it was, because they knocked it out of the park, especially against like a seasoned studio that came before them, tried and failed to make an Alien game. Yeah, that seems to be kind of the way of Alien for some reason when it comes to video games. Now, granted, I enjoyed the Alien vs. Predator game, but I mean, that was like little bits and pieces, stories of each of the, the Marines versus the Predator versus the Xenomorphs. Those were pretty cool. I just liked it because it was just a fun action game. They didn't advertise it like a horror type thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It was more sci-fi.
Yes, but Alien Isolation completely circles it right back.
It was
pure horror.
It was just the lovely dark tropes of you don't hunt the alien hunts you. And I just fell in lust over this, and I was like, oh, I want to see that pretty metal teeth with the with a mouth erection and all.
Yeah. Well, and it definitely was erect, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what was worse, you or it.
Right.
But so we had talked about this game for probably a couple months, just going over Alien and all those kind of things. And I know Lovecraft, you said Alien in general is probably one of your favorite horror movies of all time, right?
It always has. I mean, ever since I saw the preview back in 1977. And this was at the same exact time when Star Wars first came out. And it was that good. All I saw, believe it or not, was an egg.
Well, and that was your trailer experience, right? You saw Star Wars, and kind of the first horror movie to come out was Alien.
Yeah, it was just an egg, and when they started to crack the egg, and all of a sudden this eerie green light comes up, and all of a sudden the eerie music comes in. I really, really enjoyed the Alien, anything remotely Alien, including right down to the role-playing games.
It's a really good horror story, right?
Oh, yeah.
Space horror.
You at Gen Con actually got to talk to the creator of Cyberpunk, actually, who was a huge fan of the Alien franchise, right?
Yeah, we mentioned that on a couple episodes.
Yes, Mr. Mike Pondsmith, and we were talking, and all of a sudden, why not? Instead of going all full-blown fanboy on this guy, I'm just going to ask, hey, what's your favorite movie? And he said, Aliens, anything done by H.R. Geiger, Dan O'Bannon, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And he said anything of that nature, believe it or not, it's mutated cyberpunk.
Right. Yeah, I remember you saying that during the Gen Con episode, which, circling that back to the game, though, when you first saw the scenes and things like that, how reminiscent of Alien was that for you?
Oh, wow. It just took me back to 1977.
Yeah, it almost seemed like they used some of the same almost scenery. So like when they turned on the monitors.
The very same tropes and the very same imagery from the Nostromo back in the day. And it was like, I'm living this. My name is not Ripley, but give me a pulse rifle right now.
Yeah.
Here's also a fun fact about those movies. There is a prop in that movie that is actually a spray-painted G1 shockwave that's mounted to an arm. You don't know what it...
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, there's... if you pause it and look really closely, you can see it. It's the G1 original shockwave, the one that turned into the gun. Yeah, he's upside down and attached to kind of like an arm, and it's on like one of the medical tables, I think.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, so you didn't get to play the whole thing, but you got to kind of experience that first like walk into it, and it's nice because at least you were able to set it to kind of an easier mode just so we could enjoy kind of the story bits to it and all that, right?
Yeah, it's a scary story, but in my opinion, it kind of left a lot of things out, such as how the eggs got there.
You didn't get very far into the game.
No, the game is about 18 hours long, and we only played about the first, not even the first hour. I want to say like the first more like 45 minutes.
Yeah, it was a solid like 45 minutes, and then it was taking a little too long because much like any other horror game, right? They got to make you feel comfortable for a while.
Before they nail you.
Right?
Well, and we also found out that the game actually makes it so the alien appears. So if you set it to very hard mode, that alien is on your ass as soon as you step off that ship.
Yeah.
But the easier you make it, you've got some time.
Yeah, it really builds it up kind of like the Godzilla effect, right? So you only get 15 minutes of Godzilla because the whole build up towards it.
You know what's very, very interesting? Every viewer of any horror movie, you're the third party. You're watching the protagonist get it from the antagonist.
Yeah.
You know, and you're never, ever the victim. In this game, guess what? You're the victim.
100%, while other people are also the victim on the game too.
Well, all of a sudden you're looking at the mouth of this alien open up and then all of a sudden killing you.
Yes. Well, and going on the topic of space horror at the moment, we had the Dead Space remake, which Star Queen is going to talk about, but I wanted to slightly touch on Callisto Protocol before we even started that.
Yes.
Oh.
AKA the Dead Space clone. That's terrible.
So just for some backstory, Redemus was actually really looking forward to this game, but I saw some early reviews.
It was something else, like space horror.
I saw some early reviews and I kept telling him, you might want to wait till it goes on sale.
Well, thankfully, if you have a PlayStation Plus account, it is the free game of October.
Oh, wow.
So you can get it for free or you can waste $40. But let me tell you why very quickly. The story is so far not bad. It starts off kind of explaining, these like terrorists are basically taking over the cities and all that kind of things while, people are out in space. And they're essentially leading to there's some kind of mutagen that they're like releasing on people, and now it's got into like infection state.
Yep.
So pretty stereotypical, like Resident Evil type thing. However, Sam Witwer, man, if you're out there and you ever listen to this, please keep doing these awesome roles, because you are one of the most like universal actors I've ever seen in my life. He actually plays one of the semi-main characters where he is a warden, or like a warden's assistant in this jail cell out in space. And his acting is phenomenal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if you had a chance to play like Force Unleashed and all that, obviously that's where people know him. He was Starkiller. If you didn't know, he's the voice for Darth Maul, and he does the Emperor in a couple of things.
It sounds like he is the voice actor of all trades.
Oh, Sam Witwer is awesome. Like, it was one of the coolest experience getting to meet him at Celebration. But anyway, I digress. So in the game, it starts you off actually very quickly. Like, there's not a whole lot of fluff into it. It's just like, all right, you are now being arrested because of this other weird warden that just started at the jail. He needs you for something, and you don't know what just yet. Well, I don't even know completely what it is yet because I gave up on the damn game. Because my main complaint is the game is beautiful. It's on the PlayStation. You can play in, I think it's on Xbox now too, but graphics, you can, set it for ray tracing or for performance, which is pretty common among a lot of these like newer games because it requires a lot to process. I just went for, the looks because I don't really care about performance as much, although I may be regretting that at this point.
Oh.
The combat system in this is not like a normal survival horror. It is almost kind of like Dead Space, but in the sense of you have to juke out zombies.
Oh.
Yeah, it's real weird. Like you have to use the left stick to basically make yourself go left or right against like when zombies just all of a sudden come and attack you and stuff like that to basically, not get hit. Because if you get hit, you're almost like a 3-hit like chump, basically.
And you're done.
Yeah. While you're trying to, decapitate them and beat them with other various weapons, shoot them with guns and all this other stuff. It's about the time frame where even on easy mode, they don't even give you enough health to survive a lot of these situations. I just said, nah, I'm done.
I was like, nah, I'm not doing that.
No, I'm out because the save points are terrible in the game. Like they're not very well placed, like Alien Isolation, where we kept running into them, every few feet to make you progress in the game. This one made me basically go old school where you had no save points.
Oh, wow.
And I had to restart at like the worst cutscenes ever.
Oh. Oh, no.
Yeah. So I just said, nope, I'm done with that one. So let's talk about a good space horror game.
Okay.
So the remake just came out not too long ago, right?
Yes. So I haven't played the remake yet because I don't have a PS5 right now. And that will probably be one of the first games I will get. However, the original Dead Space was it was one of a kind, and I'm so glad it got remade and that the remake also does the original justice.
More gory, more beautiful.
Well, one of the big things I was worried about was, so in the original, Isaac doesn't actually talk in that game. He was a silent...
Not until number 2 or 3.
Right, he was a silent protagonist. And one of the big things I was worried about was, they're going to make him talk too much, it's going to take away from the atmosphere. But from what I've seen, it really hasn't. And I'm so glad that is the case because I did actually like Isaac as a character. But I thought in the original, having the silent protagonist kind of helped you to put yourself more in the game.
Right.
So having a silent protagonist kind of helped you to put yourself more in the game. And let me tell you, I was probably way too young to play that original game. How I even got the original Dead Space, so even my parents didn't know that I had the original Dead Space.
Oh, it's one of those.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so picture this at the time. So it's 2008, I'm like 10 years old, and for reasons, I'm working in a thrift store, right?
Okay.
Now, obviously, I can't be paid because that's child labor. So instead, the owners and I kind of had an agreement of if I saw something I want, put it in the back. It's mine when my shift's over, which can be pretty good.
That's fair.
That's pretty fair, right?
Yeah.
So we had, now this was on the military base, so we had a lot of people kind of coming in and out a lot of the time. So they would leave like all sorts of stuff behind, and 2 games we got in when some of the privates were moving out. One was Spec Ops: The Line, and the other was Dead Space.
That's such a weird 0 to 60 choice of games.
Yeah, I mean...
Well, okay, so Dead Space at the time, I couldn't have bought that game by any other means. My parents wouldn't buy it for me. Like, I was way too young to even buy that game in like a grocery store or anything. So I put the game back and I told the owners, I was like, I want these 2 games as my reward. And they didn't know any better. They didn't know video games. I was like, okay, whatever. You pick your thing, that's it. So I come home, little 10-year-old me with Dead Space.
Oh boy.
And okay, at the time, a lot of kids in my school were playing Call of Duty. I want to say this was around about the time the first Modern Warfare came out.
Okay. Yeah,
And-
I was just thinking, time frame.
Yes.
Because that's when I was at GameStop turning little bastards away.
Yeah. Well, some of those little bastards were sneaky, like me.
Well, not at GameStop. Not under Uncle Redemus's watch.
So either way, most of my friends were playing Call of Duty. Now, I didn't like Call of Duty too much because the sensitivity on that game was way too high, and still to this game gives me headaches.
Yeah.
So instead, I was like, I'm gonna play Dead Space. Dead Space came out in a time where headshots were everything. If you couldn't headshot something, you might as well not play the damn game. So I boot up this space horror shooter game, thinking, okay, this is like Resident Evil. I can just shoot the head and that's it, right? Oh no, that's not how this game works. You can shoot them in the head, but that's not gonna stop them.
They just keep coming.
Well, no, so Dead Space did something genius at the time, which a lot of games started implementing this afterwards, and funnily enough, I believe Call of Duty does to this day as well, is you had to shoot the limbs off the xenomorphs to slow them down.
And make them bleed out.
And you had to choose whether what parts of the body you wanted to basically cut off. Do you want to go for the arms and like take a weapon away from them, but that doesn't slow them down so they could still rush you? Do you want to shoot them in the legs and still have the weapon there so they still might be able to reach you, but now they're slower so it could give you some more time to think? And then there were those zero gravity segments where they're flailing at you, which weirdly enough, there was one zero gravity segment that made me feel the safest in the entire game, which was really weird.
You remember which part that was?
Yeah, it was... I don't remember what the mission was exactly or what the objective was, but I do remember the environment. It was a huge, pure white room. There was like crap floating around in there, and there was a couple of xenomorphs, but I'd killed them already and they hadn't respawned. So...
Well, they weren't called xenomorphs. What were they called?
Oh, not xenomorphs. Necromorphs. That's it. Necromorphs. It's because we just talked about Alien. So there was a couple of necromorphs that were floating around in there. Their parts were like dismembered and floating around. And weirdly enough, just the pure silence, just the hum of the Nishimura, and maybe it was the pure white and the fact that I could see everything. For some reason in that room, I was like, I'm safe here. I feel safe.
Guess again.
Well, actually, no. As soon as I exited, that was when everything went to shit again, but that was just weird moments that we have in games, you know?
Well, that's the point of a good horror, right? They got to make you feel comfortable for a little while and then rip your limbs off.
Yep.
Yes.
And that's the good recipe for a jump scare.
Absolutely.
Or you want to know... Well, this is also a stupid jump scare that got me around about the same time. Redemus, did you ever play Mortal Kombat 9?
Yes, I played all of them.
Okay, so you remember the crypt on that, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you remember
and they still did it in MK11.
Yes, and they still fucking get me every fucking time. So for those who don't know, in Mortal Kombat, through 9 through 11, they had a mechanic called the crypt. So after you did your fights, you got like some kind of currency, and then you would go to the crypt to get a reward. But the crypt kind of had its own story and level design eventually. In Mortal Kombat 9, you were in the Netherrealm, and there was a stupid jump scare that would randomly pop up, and it wasn't like something physical, it was just like an image that like flashed on screen and screamed at you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Then in Mortal Kombat 11, in Mortal Kombat 10, they took that to another level where it was in first person and shit would chase you through the crypt, and you had to find the various characters' weapons in order to fend them off.
Wow.
And then finally in Mortal Kombat 11, now the crypt has its own story.
Yep.
You're on Shang Tsung's island after some time has passed and everyone has dead or killed themselves because they're sad that Shang Tsung isn't there anymore.
Oh, well.
Yeah. And which actually does come back around in the story of MK11. But you're playing as one of Shang Tsung's apprentices. There are these little blood pools inside Goro's lair, and sometimes when you're walking past, a soul will rise out of them and it will scream at you, and then it will go back down into the water.
Yep.
And
wow.
There's also, if you go to Devora's Hive, there's spiders that will chase you that you have to kill with Shao Kahn's hammer, and why that of all things keeps fucking getting me, but when we were playing Alien Isolation, I was just sitting there like, oh, haha, see the alien coming at you, like, blah, blah, blah.
You're so scared of a hammer.
No, I'm more scared of the stupid soul things that will go as I'm walking past.
That's true.
Than the alien from Aliens.
That's fair. Although, on the topic of good story bits, there is another game. It came out quite a while ago. It's called Until Dawn.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. So this was another kind of it's what you would consider like a story survival game.
Right.
So you remember the old pick your own adventure type things? Okay. In a sense, that's kind of what this game was. So at certain cinematic points, you had a choice on what you wanted to do or say, and it was very, very heavily based on the butterfly effect.
Really?
Yes.
Yes.
That was one of the main mechanics of that game.
Yep.
Down to the logo, it was a butterfly, wasn't it, originally?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Butterfly on a skull.
Yeah.
But in it had a couple like legends in it. So one of them was like the Wendigo.
Right.
Yes.
And talking about the butterfly effect and like the Native American culture of where, their totems and all this other stuff like kind of came from.
Yep.
And it also had a couple of like classic horror setups. So we had a cast of teenagers going out to the snow cabin.
Snow vacation that one of their other friends owns.
Yeah. And at the start you're like, okay, they're just stupid teenagers. And then as the game goes on, you find out, wow, all of you are really shitty people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're all like the jocks of, like the local high school or whatever.
Right.
And, depending on kind of what happens, again, one of the characters, Rami Malek, his actual self is in it and also voicing himself. Mm-hmm. You end up finding out, this is way out of a spoiler alert, this game's been out too long.
Yeah, this game's been out for like a really long time.
He is one of the bad guys.
Okay.
So he fakes his own death to basically call out his friends for being shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
wow.
in the most fucked up way possible. Like, literally, like, think of Jigsaw style.
Okay.
Where they have a choice of you can either maim this person or you can maim Remy.
Oh, wow.
And depending on kind of what you chose, like if you picked the girl, he still got quote unquote killed.
Sounds like a serial killer's wet dream almost.
Pretty much. While
Okay.
also there is a serial killer sneaking around.
Yes.
On top of this, there's like 3 horror tropes going on in this game at the same time.
You have
wow.
the supernatural, you have the slasher, and you have the saw
Wendigo
guy.
and the saw like shit going on and all that other stuff. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
Well, I think I still have that game. If you ever want to sit down and just kind of play the butterfly effect for it, because there's not really a whole lot of moving to it. I mean, there is, but there's not.
Right.
Tons of jump scares. Holy shit.
I think it was free on PlayStation a while back too, because I think
I
have it.
I picked up another PlayStation Plus freebie type deal. I'm pretty sure Xbox, I would assume, at least has it, cheap enough at this point.
Yeah, I remember just even when the horror segments weren't occurring, like when we were just finding out about like characters' backstories and stuff, they were doing some pretty scummy things to each other.
Cheating on each other.
And humiliating like each other.
Animals.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think one of the characters, I could be wrong, either died in an accident because of something that the other characters did as well. Although I could be misremembering how that went.
Well, and also, talking about other messed up stories, the other game that I kind of had on my list, and I feel like this one kind of gets thrown to the side because of how old it is, but I really liked 1 and 2 of this, is the Fear series. Yeah, so in case nobody's ever actually played that game, the series revolves around Alma Wade, a mysterious little girl who causes death and destruction wherever she goes. Alma was born gifted with psionic powers, which her father, Harlan Wade, noticed. Harlan introduced Alma to the defense corporation he was employed by and basically used her as a bioweapon type deal to where the point she basically becomes like a ghost and you are one of like the spec ops guys that gets, brought into the team. You have to try to figure her out. And in the process, and I don't know if it was just because it came out at like kind of the peak of what they could do graphically and stuff like that. Gameplay and stuff was fine. The scare parts were really slow. So I even remember in the first one where you were walking up this hallway to basically track down this one guy, and you're walking through a puddle of blood, and I was moving pretty fast, but by the time I kind of hit a kind of a story wall, there was a skeleton that popped out of the blood and is like trying to reach for you, but it's so slow that I remember just sitting on the trigger, just like shooting the shit out of it, thinking it was going to do something, and then it didn't. And then there was another part where you get to the top of the building and you're chasing this guy, and you turn around the corner because your sensitivity is so much faster. He's trying to hit you with a chair. Here comes the killer with a chair. And the same thing. Like, I flipped around, I'm just like laying into him, like, I got you, fucker. And then he just doesn't die. So shit, it's another cutscene. But going forward, the story was really, really good for a good ghost story for a game. It was more like an action horror.
Yeah, it was more like a first-person horror shooter is what I would call it.
Yeah, it was FPS for sure, but yeah, it had like horror elements to it. And then it got really weird where you, on the third game, impregnated Elma, and it was weird.
Wow.
And you got superpowers. Yeah, it kind of went from
It went off the deep end a little bit, because I remember the third game, everyone... Well, no, you were hired, I think, to, like, kill her, but then...
That was the first one.
Well, no, I think he was still trying to kill her or contain her or something, but she ends up like falling in love with you, and then
wants your seed.
And then everyone thinks that like, oh, she's gonna kill you, and then in the end you have a baby with her and you're in hell. But
it's
like
the Antichrist.
Yeah,
dun, dun, dun.
Basically,
it's weird.
It was very,
very weird.
Yes, but 1 and 2 were great stories. That's why it's kind of on my list, because combat was good. It was a fun action bit, and then it had really interesting ghostly plots to it. I put it that way.
Speaking of ghosts, I just real quick wanted to bring up, I think I'm the only person at this table who's actually played all of the Metal Gear Solid games.
I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in Metal Gear Solid 3, there is an amazing segment in the jungle where you are fighting the fourth boss of the game, and you've been knocked out and you're dying of poison.
Okay.
And this guy's whole power is he can supposedly resurrect the dead, right? To get to the boss, it's a river that you've crossed like 1,000 times before, just going like back and forth throughout the game map. But now it's dark and it's raining. And as you're going forwards, wading through this river, the river is getting deeper, so you're getting more and more resistance in the game. That's a mechanic. If you get too muddy, you get slowed down. And slowly, people start to walk by you. And they're walking by you. Now, some of them might try and grab them if you shoot at them, but if you don't shoot at them at all, they'll just walk by. Depending on how many people you've killed in that game, will be how many people who walk by you.
Oh, wow.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple ways you can deal with enemies in Metal Gear Solid. You can go with an all non-lethal run, you can do a fully lethal run, you can do half and half. I think had done like half and half because this was like my first playthrough, and I was wondering where all these like people were coming from. And yeah, it turns out all of those people were all of the enemies in the game up until that point that you've killed so far.
Damn.
Coming back as ghosts.
Damn,
Coming to
Kojima.
nail you. Wow.
Yeah, and so by the time you reach the guy at the end, he kind of congratulates you on basically conquering your fear.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, wait a minute. That's a really like flipped story there.
Well, so Metal Gear Solid 3 is a very highly complex story.
I mean, it's Kojima, so
Yeah.
that explains itself.
Think like this is like the time of Vietnam and the CIA was doing some funky stuff.
Good old MK Ultra.
Yeah, you've also got a little bit of Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus going on in there.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Of course.
so it's an amazing game, but yeah, I remember that kind of sticking with you as being one of the more esoteric boss fights in Metal Gear, because there were some really quirky boss fights in that game. Like, for example, there was a guy you control bees and would send bees after you.
Psycho Mantis didn't show up, does he?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but there was the guy was called the Swarm, and he controlled bees, and he shot bees at you, and his armor was also bees.
Okay.
When you eat for breakfast, bees.
Well, that's
Yes.
You shit,
Yes.
bees. Ow.
Oh God, that sounds awful.
There was also a sniper in there. I want to say he was called The End or something. And now he was like an old guy. Like you saw him earlier on in the game, like they were wheeling him out in a wheelchair.
Okay.
And this is just kind of tragic, but during that boss fight, so the game actually has a real world timer in it, right? Because sometimes the food that you get in the game, you know how food goes bad, it will go bad in game if you don't eat it like right away.
Okay.
And this is kind of morbid and kind of where I'm bringing it back around to the spooky. So if you start this boss fight with this old sniper, if you quit the game and then leave for 3 days and then you boot it back up again after those 3 days, you'll get a special screen saying, "Congratulations, the end has died.
What the fuck?
You died of old age in the game.
That was
Waiting for you."
That was a new twist.
Yeah.
It's really morbid.
And he shows up as one of the ghosts as well, if you did that tactic. I took him out non-lethally, so that never happened.
Oh wow.
That is kind of cool, though.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah, so I think that was a few of our favorite video game bits for horror for this month. But there's a lot more that usually goes on. Obviously, with October, we've got special movies like we like to watch.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Special shows.
Yeah, we just had an actual Friday the 13th for this month.
Yeah.
This past Friday. So what did I actually watched Spiral for the first time, which is a book out of the Jigsaw. So, the Saw movies.
Right.
It's pretty good for a Saw prequel.
It was not what I thought it was going to be, but it was at the same time. So it had a lot of obviously stereotypical tropes for Saw movies. It had the traps and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
But it had a really cool cop thriller bit to
Kind
it.
of like a mystery, police procedural type deal thrown in
Kind
there.
of, yeah. And
Just the facts, man.
Yeah, well, and apparently the synopsis of it essentially is this guy, Chris Rock's character, his dad, who is Samuel L. Jackson, was the chief of police during this time frame where they had this thing called Article 8. And essentially, in a nutshell, what it was is it allowed cops to basically create their own peace.
What?
Yeah. So you go through the movie while this guy basically is considered a snitch because he snitched on bad cops.
Right.
During Article 8. And so everyone keeps ignoring him and all this other stuff. And this one guy at the beginning of it, essentially, he gets murdered because he was telling people false lies during Article 8.
Oh, wow.
Getting people, convicted when they're safe people. And so this trap start with the guy getting hit by a train, then it moves into a wax trip.
Which I want to say the wax trap was probably one of the more brutal traps in the series.
Very, very brutal.
Yeah.
These traps are just like if you have seen the Saw series, it's I think it was number 3, where the girl from the first one, the meth head, basically is following, Saw or Jigsaw.
Right.
And where she basically sets it up for her own revenge. These people are supposed to be able to gain their life back, but obviously, suffering other things, but obviously nobody can win at those traps.
Right.
This is kind of the same thing. So this guy's considered like a copycat.
Ooh.
Well, plot twist. Turns out that in the end there, you end up finding out that it's his partner, Chris Rock's partner.
Oh.
Yeah, so during Article 8, his partner's dad was shot because he was going to testify against one of the cops in court. And so the crooked cop that gets basically serrated by a bunch of bottles towards the end of the movie, you find out that he's the one that killed his dad, and he was the little boy that was stuck in the back room where Chris was trying to comfort him and all this other stuff and turned his dad in.
Right.
So, talk about trying to make you feel bad for a villain. The guy leads to foreshadowing a lot in the movie where he talks about how he had been waiting 20 years to join the force, and because of Chris Rock's dad, he wanted to do that his whole entire life.
Oh, wow.
AKA he wanted to get revenge on those cops, including his dad.
Wow.
And so, he does another foreshadow where basically he's alluding that he's the one pulling the strings and all this stuff. And then literally at the end of the movie, He strings up Samuel L. Jackson in basically Rottweiler type deal.
Oh, man.
Like a puppet. And as he tells Chris that obviously he's the one that's doing it, and he says you have an option. This is the game. You can either have your dad live or he dies and everyone loses. And so basically during this, in order to give him like a countdown, Samuel L. Jackson is bleeding out by these like syringes. And he's like, did you know that there's 1.5 gallons of blood in the human body? Which equates to about 4 minutes of lifetime left for him. And he calls the SWAT in, tells them that there's a guy with a gun, all this other stuff to come in there.
Yep.
So the cops are coming in. The Jigsaw killer hooks up this other thing to the door. You don't really think about it. You're like, okay, maybe it's just a bomb, right? Because that's just what, terrorists and crap do. Chris Rock makes the decision with one bullet in his gun to go ahead and, let it get his dad down. Gets his dad down, start beating the shit out of this guy. He basically lures him into this elevator. The SWAT starts cutting into the door, and they cut that string. Well, that string was hooked up right back up to where he shot his dad down as a secondary line, drug his dad back up like a puppet, and forced him on a mechanical thing to drop what made it look like he had a shotgun in his hand, and he was going to shoot the SWAT guys.
Oh, shit.
So then the SWAT guys got, they shot at him because they, didn't want to get shot at. And then he escapes in the elevator, and that's the end of the movie.
So
crazy.
So the moral of the story is police brutality is bad.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's very bad, kids. Don't do it.
This is not a political thing or whatever, but I thought it was a really good horror movie, like a thriller.
It is a very good prequel to Saw.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. I don't know if they have another one coming out. I know that it's been in talk for a little while, but I don't think they're going to do it. So.
Well, Chris Rock also wrote that movie too,
and it was phenomenal. Actually, that was not a normal character I expected him to play.
Not really, no.
Lovecraft, what about you? What's some of your favorite Friday the 13th movies to watch during October?
Let me count the ways. I always go back to the old standby simply because of the clear and simple fact. I look at a horror film and I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen this song and dance before. Go to another horror movie. Oh wait, it's another copycat horror movie.
A lot of it's, copied.
And I'm like, okay, let's cut the bullshit, shall we? Go home. The original Exorcist.
Which also goes hand in hand with the last episode.
Oh, yeah. It's the original Exorcist. If I want, say, good old-fashioned sci-fi, I'm going to look at the old 1950s War of the Worlds. I'm going to look,
oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I'm going to look at the 1950s Blob. I mean, the 1950s really outshined for me as sci-fi, especially at this time of year, because you don't know what ghosts and ghouls and other sci-fi machinations could come out of the woodwork. So I watched the originals. Without those, we wouldn't have anything.
You mean like the Universal Monsters type deal?
Dracula.
Yeah.
The original Dracula. Frankenstein.
Invisible
the
Man.
Mummy.
Yeah, not the Brendan Fraser one.
Yeah, not
the
Brendan Fraser.
Classical treasure.
That's still a classic. What are you talking about?
That is absolutely a classic.
That is a treasured classic.
I guess that could kind of be considered a semi-horror movie.
Yeah.
God knows the PS1 game was terrifying for that movie.
But anything that is Hammer horror, ladies and gentlemen. Anything done by Christopher Lee, anything done by Sir Peter Cushing, anything done by Lon Chaney Jr., anything by the late great American god of horror, Vincent Price.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
House on Haunted Hill. You can go back and watch the Muppet episode. Yeah, The Raven. All those. Hitchcock. I mean, it's that time of season 2.
Yep.
Which actually, I'm kind of surprised that Franklin hasn't been doing their Hitchcock festival the last couple of years.
No, they haven't, because they haven't found any financial backers as of recently. You can correct
Oh, gotcha.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, dear friends, in the comments section, so prove me wrong.
I know that Trunk or Treat is also huge right now as well. Same with the Irvington Halloween Festival. That's gotten huge. So
Which I think that's going on next weekend, because Franklin is the 28th.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's when we'll be doing karaoke.
Yes. Now, what's interesting, Trunk or Treat is the greatest Indiana phenomenon ever that just won't die. I mean, you could do it in front of a church, you can do it in front of a store that you own, you can do it in front of a bar, believe it or not.
Yeah, well, and everybody's really creative about it, right? It's not just, hey, I'm going to open my trunk and just hand out candy. They really decorate them and make them look really cool. And
I mean, my God, especially I have a distant relative who actually owns 3 hearses, and he actually goes hog wild over that.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Well, actually, so kind of talking about that, Lovecraft, why don't you take us back in time and present to us what Halloween in October used to be like when you were a kid.
Oh boy. You can smell the crisp air right off the bat. As soon as the world just begins to slow down because of world entropy and begins to feel colder, and you sense it, and also the trees begins to sense it too. I remember as a kid going from my house to the comic book store. I would look up and there would just be this cathedral of trees, all green, going over the tops of the mansions in which was across the entire city. And then, come October, November, I would walk from that same comic book store back to home, and this time there would be fresh red, orange, yellow leaves.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the most beautiful sections of fall, right?
Yeah.
Changing of the leaves.
And I remember one time during Halloween, and this was before my intro to the occult, I remember the Statler Mansion. Hopefully it's still there. This gorgeous, something straight out of Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
You knew there was something in the roof, but you couldn't put your finger on it.
You mean like supernatural? Or
Very supernatural.
Okay, gotcha.
Just radiating negative energy.
So it's the monster house.
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting.
And when you come up to it, all of a sudden you were knocked in the head with a large Snickers bar saying Happy Halloween.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Full-sized?
Full-sized candy
yeah.
bars.
Wow, that's the house.
Oh yeah. And there was many a time I visited that house and I got to know the Statler family quite well. And I often asked, what's up with the attic? Immediately, the subject will change. Don't know, and I still don't.
That kind of reminds me of the Hannah house, too, because everybody knows the history, but nobody seems to want to talk about it out there. It's very weird.
Yeah, it's one of those strange coincidental things in which you want to put your finger on, but yet you can't find it.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of that, especially in Indiana.
Yeah, it's really strange. You know, it kind of reminds me when I was growing up back in Elkhart, Indiana. You know, everything was alive and everything was just coming together. I was hanging out with a guy who became one of my dearest friends, and we played D&D for years together. And believe it or not, even at 23, when I got a chance to break from seminary, I actually went out with him and went trick-or-treating.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, I guess back at that time frame, you know, it still was not exactly a faux pas for little older kids to still go.
No, because back then it was kind of nice to see actual older people, including actual full-blown adults, just going with their kids in full costume, in full regalia or whatever, and just going out and have a good time.
Did you guys have a lot of pranks? A lot of tricks?
Yeah, I remember one year, and this was the day after Halloween. I never forgot this, and this was on a Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. Wanted to make coffee, took a look outside after I turned on the television in order to watch some cartoons. Looked outside, all draped in toilet paper.
The classic.
Oh yeah, because come to find out, 2 days later, a bunch of my dad's friends from work actually bought out all the cheap toilet paper and just TP'd the entire house.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Oh, the entire house, the entire back lawn, you name it, including the garden in which we had. It was crazy nuts, and it took us 2 days before the rains came. And
of course, you had to get it done because you knew it was coming.
Yep. And when we found out, my dad wanted to fire all of them. Oh yeah, but he didn't, because if he did, that company would have been screwed at the time. So. Oh
yeah, no kidding. Well, and I mean, you know, if adults are kind of doing pranks, it's still funny.
what was really enlightening for me every time Halloween would come, always the neo-pagan community always came together because the veil between the worlds is thin. And we always had a ton of celebrations, a ton of love, and a ton of laughter, and believe it or not, a ton of tears, believe it or not. But nonetheless, it was always community.
Yeah.
And we always had that, and we always relied upon it. And I hope it's still there even after I've been away from there for about 13 years now. So here we are.
Oh, sounds like time for a trip.
Yeah, I know.
Field trip episode. We haven't done those in a long time, actually.
No, we haven't.
You will like Elkhart.
Yeah, I've heard some pretty good things out of it for sure. It's on my list of places to stop by. I know that there's a couple of really cool game stores up there too.
The Griffin Bookstore of South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of, some bookstores and stuff as well.
So that'd be fun to go check out.
I think there's a manga shop actually that's up there. It's either near Elkhart or it's Fort Wayne. I don't remember.
Are you sure that's not in Irvington?
It's not in Irvington. No.
Okay. Well, they have the anime cafe or whatever. over
No,
there,
it's.
too, but-
I know what you're talking about, and it's not that.
Okay, gotcha. So, what was one of your favorite Halloween costumes? Just out of curiosity.
Oh,
So obviously those have changed massively
Yeah.
from 8 more days till Halloween to I'm a slut.
Yeah.
No, it's always been like that.
That's true. I guess there's different iterations of it.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to sound strange. I walked around with my same Roman cassock with the Roman collar.
You know, it's funny how that translates to horror.
Yeah, I know. And I was carrying a cross with the joking phrase, "May the power of Christ compel you."
Wow. I did see this was always
John.
this was always one of the ones that cracked me up too was they had a priest costume. It was very simple. It's just the black robes with the white collar in there.
Correct, the white collar.
Yep. And
Right down to the 33 buttons from the neck all the way down to the ankle.
I don't know if this one was that detailed just because it's a Halloween costume, but it came with a Bible. But if you open the Bible, it had a flask in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then also too, in one of the sleeves, it had one of those like suction cup like pump things. It made a certain appendage raised to the solution.
Oh, that's a different kind of horror you're talking
Yeah,
about
that's a different
there.
kind of
that's a
horror.
different
That's a different kind.
I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, so I mean, costumes have changed massively.
Yeah.
Every single year something changes. Now it's gotten to the point where it's like if there's a new movie that came out, somebody's, cosplaying it or doing a costume of it.
And what I remember the worst time in Elkhart, I can't remember if it was New Year's or it was All Hallows Eve. And we were just walking through downtown Elkhart and kids were just having a ball and we were just having a blast. And then all of a sudden, my old coven mate, she gets hit by a bullet.
Oh.
Some idiot on the roof chose to fire their pistol.
Oh, for goodness sake.
In the air, yep.
And then all of a sudden she went, she just drops, blood everywhere, and we just had to drive her off to the hospital.
Oh, geez. Hopefully she was okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, she was, if any, like 2 to 3 feet in front of her, she'd have been dead.
Yeah, which I don't understand why people still do that. Bullets don't just stay up in the air. They got to come back down.
Yeah, gravity works, folks. But that was a bad instance because somebody did something dumb.
Yeah, and that's usually how it goes. Bringing it back, at least. When I was a kid, I was still watching a lot of the same, 80s creepy shows and things like that, right? So obviously we had Sammy Terry, the myth, the legend. His son has taken over Sammy Terry Jr. He does the whole Sammy Terry bit still. Mm-hmm. So if you guys have seen posts where I'm like, have a pleasant nightmares and things like that, that's where it's from.
Have a pleasant night.
We had a excellent opportunity to meet him last year.
Oh, that was so good.
And I'll try to post some pictures kind of like us, getting basically choked out by Sammy Terry. That was kind of funny. But that was cool. And then we had the Crypt Keeper growing up. Yeah. Hello, kitties. Like that stuff. Yeah. Very, very, very creepy as a kid. I still remember Bordello Blood. Still one of my favorite Crypt Keepers.
Bordello Blood, wow.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories. And then there was another one with the tattoo one where he went to go see like a voodoo doctor to do tattoos.
Yes.
And it ended up like putting a snake in his skin and it like popped out and stuff. Oh my God. I'm telling you, man, TV was messed up back then.
Oh, I don't know. I think the show that I showed you that I grew up with might have topped both of those. You remember when I showed you
the animated one?
Yeah, Creepy Tales for Gruesome Kids, where even the opening was fucked up.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, so that was a show that ran on ITV in the UK, and the opening was in claymation, and it was about this kid going to this creepy movie theater to watch some creepy movie, right? And it had like a skeleton hand giving him the popcorn and stuff like that. But when you were zooming into the popcorn, he actually had a different kind of insect.
Oh.
And depending on the insect was how scary that story was going to be that week. The least scary, I think, was like beetles, and when you knew you were in for a fucked up time was when he was eating centipedes. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to look up the trailer for it, because it is actually really messed up for a kid's show.
Yeah, and some of those I actually remembered I stopped watching that show because it actually made me sick to my stomach a few times.
Yeah, well, that's like when Are You Afraid of the Dark came out. So
I remember that.
Yeah, Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark. You can still watch it on Paramount Plus if you have it. And then they also have a new one through Disney that you can also watch too. I think the original is so creepy. There was a very long period of time when I was a kid, I was very scared of pools. Because if you know, you know. There's a bloody skeleton ghost pirate thing that would come out of the water, and it was awful.
You would hate Poltergeist.
Oh, I love Poltergeist now, but yes, that was on my list. That was on my list of movies I could not watch. It was that, the original It, the TV one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That scared the shit out of me. Beep, beep.
I loved that one and Poltergeist at the same time.
Oh, they were great.
It was great because I remember we actually had HBO for the first time and watching Poltergeist, and this was on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And we were just glued to this sucker, and it was like, whoa, what is this mess?
Yeah.
And then it was practically directed by Steven Spielberg, one of our favorite directors. So,
and it's hilarious how you can kind of go back and watch these movies and how silly they really are.
oh God, yes.
So yeah, and a lot of those, I mean, like a lot of these movies now, I'm sure I'm probably gonna, like, even now I'm like, okay, these are silly, but when I get even older, I'm sure I'll be like, oh, these are really silly.
Yeah, especially long before high technology and the internet.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's also one of the things, I think I brought it up a few times, but there was a really good documentary called Nightmares of the Red, White, and Blue. It was on Netflix for the longest time. Mm-hmm. And it talks about the desensitization of horror through the years. And it took to the point where Saw had to come out to really up the game of the crazy camera angles, the very like speed adrenaline.
Well, Saw was also made on like a shoestring budget as well, so it also showed
did great.
It also showed that like you didn't need like all this costume effects and makeup and multiple sets. Like
just fake limbs and a lot of blood.
Fake limbs, a lot of fake blood, and a room that you rented in your friend's bathroom.
Fun fact: in Psycho, the original one, do you know what the blood was that was shown in black and white?
I want to say...
Leave a comment down below if you know.
This is true. We'll leave it down there.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you now, but it was chocolate. It was Hershey's chocolate.
Yeah, because they needed it to show.
Yeah, they needed to show, and the consistency was perfect.
And of course, this was pre-color film.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and it worked extremely well. It's amazing what film can do, with like practical effects and things like that. It's actually kind of the same thing they did with WandaVision. Vision was supposed to be the like kind of offset pink, right? Mm-hmm. But he was blue when they were doing the black and white episodes, so you knew that was the color he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I love all that kind of like weird history of all those things. And then of course you had movies like The Thing. Oh. Some of the best like animatronic fake outs I've ever seen in my life.
No. Let's say for clarification, the original 1951 with James Arness who played The Thing, or are we talking John Carpenter's The Thing?
Which was the one with like the animatronic like head thing that came out of the guy's stomach?
That would be John Carpenter.
That was John
The John Carpenter
Carpenter's.
one. Yeah, that's the one I'm referring to. That was still creepy to me.
Yeah, it was.
Practical effects mixed with animatronics, still creepy. That's how you know the movie stands up.
That's also why when they were filming Jurassic Park, the T-Rex kept freaking them out because it was pouring down with rain and they had that huge T-Rex animatronic, but because it kept getting wet, the T-Rex kept jerking like to the side and around, so it would freak out like everyone.
Yes.
From it was where it was malfunctioning.
Yep. And then when they lowered the T-Rex's mouth onto the Jeep, it broke its tooth because it came down too hard.
Yep.
Fantastic. And then they kept it in the lore. So.
And then also, fun fact as well, that scene, even though it's equally as terrifying, is actually not how it went in the book. In the book, when the T-Rex bit down, it was actually supposed to pick up and throw the car.
Right.
Which is how they ended up in the tree.
Yeah.
Because of the car.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, but instead, just as creepy, and I think everyone remembers the glass of water on the dashboard and hearing the booms.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, and speaking of good stories, myths, and lores and all that kind of stuff, we all know that Indiana is actually full of them.
Oh boy, are they ever.
Yeah, Indiana is filled with ghost stories from legends and myths to mysterious things that go bump in the night.
Oh God, I got a good one for you.
Yes, and this is the segment we're going to start talking about some Indiana history of local haunts. Lovecraft, why don't you start us?
Oh man. Okay, imagine this. A tiny little northern Indiana village, okay, became the target of a full-blown military invasion. The date, our own Civil War.
Yep, gotta love those stories.
Now imagine this. From out of nowhere comes Confederate forces about ready to rape, plunder, and destroy your little northern village and trying to gain a foothold in Indiana just so Indiana could join the Confederation. That failed.
Terribly.
Oh yeah, terribly. You see, the original idea was if Sherman was going to go through Georgia just raising hell and doing covert operations behind enemy lines, this one very unique Confederate general had that same crazy idea. And so what did he do? He chooses Bristol, Indiana. To this day, Civil War reenactors will reenact the Battle of Bristol, Indiana.
Actually, I believe that was going on this weekend too.
Yes.
From what I saw.
Yes. Now, here's where it gets creepy, very quickly. Now, it's always around this time of year. From a distance, you will hear rifle shots, you will hear cannons go off, you will hear forward march. From nowhere, local residents to this day thought it was a complete hoax. And of course, they always had Elkhart County sheriffs and of course, Bristol, Indiana police constables trying to find out where this is coming from. And it was from nowhere. Even to this day, they don't know where this is coming from.
Interesting.
Interesting fact, a couple of years ago, me and a friend of mine who used to live in Bristol, she had a lovely apartment. And we went up on the balcony and she said, shh, just listen. And this was on a quiet full moon in the middle of a field. And then you hear pop, 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 boom.
Full-blown war.
Yeah, a full-blown conflict. I rushed downstairs. Now bear this in mind. I'm like 27 and I'm running full gallop from the third story.
Yeah, I mean, I would too.
Run outside to see, and I figured out where the direction was. Now bear this in mind. I had no noise finders, nothing hyper technological. Went into this freshly mowed cornfield. Nothing.
Okay.
There was absolutely nothing. All except for, and I tripped over this, a cannonball that there was grape shot everywhere.
Ooh, that would be creepy to find. Also cool. Hope you didn't keep it.
I turned it in.
Okay, good call.
I turned it in.
Good call. You don't need haunted relics.
Yeah, and I was like, John, where'd you find all this buckshot? No, it's grape shot, hon. This came from guns back in the Civil War.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, where do we turn this to? Elkhart County Historical Society. Duh. So we turned it in. Got no mention in the paper, no nothing. But every year at this time of year, you will hear the Battle of Bristol, Indiana played again and again and again.
Yeah, that would be fun to actually go try and hear, for sure.
Oh, you'll hear it.
Leave a comment down below if you want to try to see if you can hear it with us, maybe live on like Twitch or something. That'd be cool. I don't know when we'll make it out there, but we'll definitely try to, for sure. And of course, I've got a horror story to kind of follow with that too. So this one actually is the Devil's Gate out of Brazil, Indiana.
Ooh.
This is also another very big legend within Indiana. Legend has it that there were 7 gates to hell located throughout the Wabash Valley countryside.
I've heard of this.
Although many of those gates have been destroyed, the one in Brazil still stands. According to lore, a train derailed on top of the gate and all the passengers were killed and sent to hell. Many believe that when you find the tunnel, all you have to do is flash your car lights or flashlight 3 times into it before the things will appear. Some report seeing the gatekeeper standing on top of the tunnel. Others have seen blood on the walls or had restless spirits screaming and pounding on their vehicles.
Oh, wow.
There's another bit to that too. If you see your name begin to glow on the walls, or, as the other one that I have also heard about this too, is you can go there and leave sawdust on your windshield.
Ooh,
Same effect. If you see your name begin to pop up, either on the walls or on your windshield, rumor says you'll be dead by morning.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
forget it.
Lovely.
Yeah. The other legend states that if you can find all 7 of the Hell's Gates tunnels and drive through them, when you look back after the 7th gate, you'll see Hell's actual gate closing behind you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Very, very creepy location. And there's obviously the Hannah House in Indiana. There's Whisperers Estate. That was just one of the newer ones. Actually, I didn't know it was a thing, but I had always heard kind of growing up kind of about it. It's just they've changed locations every once in a while.
Right.
But that one is in Brazil, Indiana. So if you feel
Adventurous.
Then,
and if you find a sign in a very archaic language saying, all ben and all hope ye who enter here, run.
yeah. I will tell you right now, 8-Bits and Dice Rolls will not be going to try that one out.
No.
We don't mess with the devil. We don't mess with any of that crap. So, Star Queen, I know you don't really have a Indiana story, but you said you've got one from Kentucky potentially.
Well, I guess I'm in a little bit of a unique position because
You've moved a lot.
I have moved a lot, yes. So I've experienced lots of different kinds of Halloweens, I want to say. In the UK, at least when I was growing up in the early 2000s, it was very much viewed as a kid thing. So I went to a lot of parties, like dressed up in costume, and my mum, who actually did do a stint in fashion design at one point, she would actually make all my costumes for me and design them all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was like I was a little devil one year with like a dress she altered that had like red and like mesh on it, and I had these cute little hair clips, and I get like the hair glitter and everything.
So you got the fancy one. I think my most fancy one I ever had was my mom sewed me a Link costume from Legend of Zelda, because that was about the same time Legend of Zelda 64 came out for Ocarina of Time.
Nice.
Well, and then most of the time I would just want to be like a Barbie princess or something.
Sure.
So she would get me like the latest Barbie costume, but she'd do my hair all nice and like do me some makeup, which was a big point of contention around the other mothers at the time of you're letting your 10-year-old daughter wear makeup. My mom was like, it's just glitter, chill. And when I want to say experienced my first American Halloween was actually when I was living in Germany on a military base at the time, which that base had some kind of creepy history to it as well. So the base that I actually lived on, which was in the hillside, was actually a former Nazi base that the Americans took over during World War II.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's scarier than any Halloween.
And there's actually photos you can find that now they have since been destroyed for obvious reasons, of the old gates to that base where they had two, I believe it was hawks, and each of them were holding like the swastika symbols. Obviously these have been destroyed, but the reason why the symbol of that base was the hawk was because what's the symbol of the American military for the most part?
The American Eagle.
Yeah.
And what do hawks like to prey on?
Eagles.
Exactly. So there was that, and it was on that base I basically had my first American experience with my friends. My mum did kind of an evolution of my costume. She gave me a zombie hunter costume, and we had so much fake blood that we used with that costume. And so we kind of DIY'd it to make it look like a little more bloody, like I'd been in a fight or something. But there was people, it was like that whole base was just like a huge party. Like everybody was out on the street, everyone was giving away candy, people were having like barbecues. I had a hamburger. Like
what?
Yeah,
Nice.
like just near like one of the residential buildings, there was just a bunch of people doing up a shit ton of barbecue, and they were like, hey, you want a hamburger, you want a hot dog, like we got bean burgers. And I'm like, I'll take a burger, sure. And then I had this giant bag of candy that probably weighed around 2 pounds, that when I came home and I dumped out on my bed, I might still have the photo of it somewhere, my mum was like, oh my god, because we knew Americans took Halloween very seriously, but we didn't think to that level.
Candy, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And our school, I remember, was really cool about it. They, at least in Germany, they allowed us to wear costumes to school. Now, granted, they were very lax on dress code anyway, so I remember I showed up one time in like a full Attack on Titan uniform and just wore that for the whole day. I had that. But when I got to Kentucky, I was a little too old for trick-or-treating at that point, and nobody was really into it in Kentucky because we had some weird rules that we had to follow about curfews for kids and stuff like that, and they were very strict. But one of the things that always used to creep me out was on the way to school, we had to go over a bridge, right? Now, Fort Campbell, this is in Kentucky, Fort Campbell is a very old US military base. It used to be one of the biggest bases in the whole of the US. I want to say it's the second biggest, actually, and Camp Atterbury being the biggest. But there was a bridge that we would always pass under, and below that bridge there was a huge rusted over door. Nobody knew what this door was. Nobody kind of really batted an eyelid at it because, after you drive past something for so long, you don't really think about it too much, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So one year, the newspaper on base decided to do a little investigating because everyone was like, oh, what's up with this weird door? Well, it turns out that weird door was a decommissioned nuclear storage silo.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, and it was just open. Anyone who had clearance to be on base could go in there.
Oh, with or without the survival suits?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because well, all the nukes had been moved, and they'd been moved like long ago. This was like I said, Fort Campbell was like a big base in World War II, so I want to say they might have moved them out of there at like the end of that.
Right.
Or I don't know, maybe it was a short time after that. It's not really clear, but I just remember those big rusted doors and not thinking twice about it, thinking about like, oh, maybe it's a maintenance like area for the neighborhood or whatever. Nope, you're living on top of a decommissioned nuclear silo.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, that's there was reasons why we had a curfew on that base.
That's understandable.
Yeah, there was I think there was a lot of secrets that people weren't really willing to divulge.
Now, I got a question to ask.
Sure.
During the middle of the night, was there any trains that you heard?
No, there was train tracks on base, but that, as far as I'm aware, they were not in use. I
Okay.
never heard any trains.
Well, that's good.
Now, we did also like to mess with my one friend when we were living in Germany because there was a base that was actually sitting at the back of the Black Forest. This was also when Slender Man was kind of big as well.
I remember that craze.
So we always used to joke that my poor friend Daisy, I love you. I don't know if you listen to this, but I'm sorry that we did this to you. She was very short, probably still is. And we always used to joke because of how small she was that Slender Man was going to come through her window at night and take her.
Oh my God.
That's mean.
It was mean. Daisy, I'm sorry.
That's mean.
You also introduced me to Helsing and Black Butlers, so I'm sorry that we did that to you.
Yeah, what the fuck? That's messed up.
Yeah, you're a great friend you are.
Yeah, Jesus.
No, we were all cool, but it was just, the bases could get very creepy at night.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know Stranger Things is kind of big right now with the whole, like, playing on MK Ultra and all that, and military government type secrets, and I'm sure there was probably a lot of stuff that they kept from us, for a good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was also I want to say there was a haunted hallway at my school in Germany as well.
Oh, I'm not surprised there at all.
No.
At my school in Germany, the school was on 2 floors, so we had a bunch of stairwells that connected the floors. We had 3 on the right side, we had 2 on the left side. Now, nobody ever used this one particular hallway because, for some odd reason, even though the ceiling and windows were all connected, so it was kind of greenhouse looking, you would expect that to be pretty hot, right? Especially in the summer if it's all windows, yeah. It was always freezing cold. No matter if you went there in the height of summer when it was beaming down outside, or if you went there in the middle of winter or any time of year, this stairwell was always stone cold. And nobody ever really used it for that reason. And you know, sometimes when you get like a bad feeling going near something, there was just a lot of bad vibes, let's just say.
Yeah.
So when one day I had to go from the choir room down to the basement of the school because the basement was the 2nd floor. I was running late and I couldn't make it to the left stairwell, so I took the other one. And I remember just this creeping chill came over me as I was walking down this stairwell, almost like I'm not supposed to be here. Even though there was no teacher had said you can't go in that stairwell, it wasn't like a maintenance stairwell, it was just a stairwell. So I kind of got talking to my friends and being like, has anyone noticed that this stairwell is always like really cold? And everyone was like, yeah, we don't know what's up with that. So Moa did a little bit of research in the school library, came across some old newspapers, and it turns out there was a very good fucking reason that nobody went into that stairwell, because there was a girl who was going from her science class down to the basement, just like a lot of kids would do in that situation, except she tripped and fell down those 3 flights of stairs.
Oh, yeah.
Ow.
Snapped her neck, snapped her spine. She was dead.
Yikes.
And they found her 3 days later when one of the science teachers, because the school closed for the weekend, right? When one of the science teachers was coming into work and found her dead at the bottom of the stairwell.
Wow.
And nobody ever told us this story. I found that story out for myself. None of the teachers knew about this story. This was just a tragedy that happened. But yeah, ever since, that stairwell was just extremely cold and just gives you just a sense of like, I shouldn't be here.
Might
be a warning type situation, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Could be.
And obviously she was possibly stuck there because the person didn't have a belief system in life.
Well, it could have been that, or you know, unfinished business, and it was kind of a very untimely, passing. So,
well, again, and it's like one of those things you don't even really think about, you know?
True.
Yeah.
You don't really think, whenever we talk about these kind of stories, there's always some person with murderous intent did this, or, oh, this person went off the deep end and did this to this people.
Not always.
No.
Yeah.
But this this was just an everyday occurrence that was just tragic, and for some reason, even though that hallway is filled with sun, it's always cold.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, and that kind of reminds me of Franklin College, down in Franklin, Indiana.
Yeah. Oh, is that haunted? Because that would not surprise me with how that building looks.
Yeah. Well, it's the...
Which building?
Is it the main one?
Benjamin Franklin's.
Yeah, I know
building.
the one.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was long story short, there was a massive fire that apparently happened in that hallway, and a bunch of people, burned to death in that place. And they say, I think it's like around either it's like 12 or it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, every other day or something like that. You can always smell burnt flesh.
Oh, wow.
In there, right? So it's just it's the situations where these people died untimely and they might have had other things they needed to do, or they're trying to forever figure out how they died. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it could be one of those things. Yeah, so that's some interesting stories. We can always go into more.
We can go on for the next 24 hours, but we all know that you guys have a life too.
Yeah, yes. So we just wanted to creep you out at least one more time, if not one more after this. If we do, it'll probably be either on Halloween or it'll be the one afterwards. But we are, a little pressed for time and schedules and all that stuff, just like anybody else. So we at least wanted to get you a couple cool episodes, and or if even past Halloween, if you want to talk about more ghost stories, let us know.
Yes, please.
Make sure to know. Yeah, let us know by commenting and subscribing to the channel.
Yes,
and
do those weird and wonderful things on YouTube. It would help us to help the algorithm, pure and simple.
Yeah, it helps us out a lot, and it keeps us going and all those other things to see who's interested in our content and all that. Or again, as always, just let us know what you want to talk about and those kind of things. More than likely, we probably already have, or we're absolutely going to.
Yes.
So it's just kind of up to you what you'd like to hear and all those kind of things going forward. I know this is a variety channel for sure, so we're not for everybody, but we try to be a little bit of everything.
Yep.
So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this other spooktacular journey.
But
yeah. Part 2, potentially part 3 coming soon. If not, we're going to be getting into some more fun actual videos. So I have a medieval cooking segment that we're going to try to do, like a fantasy cooking segment.
Ooh, spiffy.
That's coming in November, and then we will move towards Christmas, like I mentioned before, or the holidays, depending on what you like to practice. But thank you so much, as always, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure until next time to put that coin in the slot, hit that power button, roll for initiative, and we'll see you next time.
Blessed be.
Bye.